What I see is an overwhelm that happens because you open up and then it winds up exposing all these things from the monogamous relationship that were kind of invisible and a little problematic. And usually that has to do with forms of codependency that were unintentional. And so the couple's opening up and you're dealing with this partner over here and their different styles and ways of being and how do I manage time? I've never used a Google Calendar, like all of these life skills and relationship skills. And then there's all of this past relationship stuff to process.
Exploring the human journey.
My name is Jessica Fern. I'm a psychotherapist and coach living in Boulder, Colorado. The umbrella term is consensual non-monogamy. And so that would be where people are having multiple romantic or sexual partners at the same time. But everyone knows, everyone's consenting and everyone is aware that there's multiple partners, which is different than non-monogamy where you might have more than one sexual partner, but not everyone knows and not everyone is consenting. And so under that umbrella of consensual non-monogamy, we have things like people who do swinging, people who do open relationship or monogamish relationship, people who do polyamory, or even relationship anarchy. I think a general way of thinking of the work that I do is really supporting people in that inner work and the outer work that needs to happen so that they're expressing their love and their sexuality and their relationships based on what's most authentic to them instead of what society says they're supposed to do. So in practice, that does look like doing a lot of trauma work, attachment work, and really helping individuals or couples or multiple partner relationships of how do we do non-traditional relationship structures? How do we do non-traditional sexual expressions? As we evolve as consciousness in these human bodies, one of the ways that really can evolve us, the playground for that, are our human relationships. And there's really no better place to push us further in our personal and collective evolution as what's going on with love and sex and romance.
Hi and welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. Today we're going to have so much fun. Jessica Fern is with us on set. Jessica, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things that Gail and I have experienced on exploring our own human journeys is the releasing of old paradigms. Mm-hmm. The paradigm of it's one man, one woman, till death do us part. And that's all that it is.
And the part that really, some of that is all based out of shame and guilt. And even some of the reason why we got married was just because
that's how you do it.
Yeah, that's how you do it. You can't have sex before you're married. And we did.
So you sinned.
My mom might watch this. Hey, my mom might watch this. Be careful. So,
my mom might too.
But the whole point is that we're deconstructing paradigms, whether it's religious or politics or relationship or whatever that is. And part of that is the paradigm of monogamy.
Yes.
And all the things that go along with the shame and guilt. So I love how you've given presence to the different styles of conscious non-monogamy. Mm-hmm. And there's so many different flavors. And basically, from what I'm gathering, is you can create your own relationship, whatever you and your partner or partners want. And
exactly.
That's one of the biggest things.
Yes, it is. You don't have to use Amy Guerin's term, the relationship escalator. Do you know about that?
Tell us.
Okay, so you know it from the child's tale. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby in the baby carriage, right? And so in the book, Stepping Off the Relationship Escalator, they really more exemplify that we know these steps where we meet, we fall in love, you meet my parents, we maybe move in, or first we get married, then we move in. It's changed generationally, right? Then we have the white picket fence, we have the child, and we die. And the success of a relationship is only when a relationship ends because of death, right?
Yeah.
If you leave a relationship before death, you've failed.
Oh.
right?
So
And,
good, yes.
right. And the reason it's an escalator, not a staircase, is because you step one step on and it just takes you. And we all kind of culturally, unconsciously know the steps.
Yeah, that's that collective unconscious
collective,
that we
right.
deal with, and we don't even know we're dealing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the point is, we don't have to ride the escalator. We can say, well, I want to live together, but I don't want to do this. Or I don't want to live together, but we're still partners. Or, we can pick and choose the parts that we want to participate in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a relationship any less valuable or successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point about that, because I have been in a space where Gail is my wife. I love her. If that was the only option, then I have to wait until either she dies or I die to ever have another experience.
Right. Exactly. And you start from the escalator now at the bottom up with the new person.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, like, I literally wanted to die just so he could, like, have that experience.
Right, because in this paradigm, that's the only option.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Instead of, well, what is it that you've been doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like the shame that is around two people going separate ways or redefining their relationship, it's always there.
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting a divorce? What's the first response?
Aww, sorry.
Or you've been married for 30 years because we're celebrating our 30th anniversary. Oh, congratulations. We're so happy. There's still love in the world. I'm like,
right. What
I don't
if
even
that
like
was
that
a
response.
30-year miserable relationship, but you stayed together, so it's successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas
just so you know, it wasn't miserable.
Right, it wasn't.
No, we're still having fun. We're still having fun.
But it's exemplifying
But it
that we
is.
have this idea that longevity is the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right, instead of maybe a relationship has a few years in it or a few months, but it might have been extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's something that's really important. You gave presence to that in the feature video, that when you are in a relationship with someone, whether it's short or long, you are learning and growing so much. And as the biggest contribution to this whole spiritual journey is that we're a spiritual being having a human experience. Well, what is it that your soul needs to discover? And when you have a different partner, a different experience, a different mirror, if you will, it creates such a different, how do I show up? It creates such a difference in that.
Yeah, and that was a big piece in my personal exploration of going from monogamy to polyamory. There was this impulse of, like, there's a certain growth that for me only does happen in a romantic type of intimate relationship. There's a lot of growth that happens in other types of relationships too, but there was this, like, I want to feel what that's like to have multiple partners that are pushing me to grow in different ways and different expressions of me that only come forth with different people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think one thing that Dave struggled with is not feeling like he was enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I needed to have somebody else because he wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. Like he wanted you to have another partner.
No, like
no, he did not want her. But I wanted another partner because I didn't feel like, and that's part of our karmic journey that we are just now discovering.
Right.
A year into this exploration, as I'm realizing, I didn't feel like I was enough. And I think it's coming from that religious, you're not enough, you're not worthy, Jesus has to die for your sins because you're not good enough thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he felt like he wasn't enough of a man, but that he should be everything that I would ever need.
Right. And that's one of the cultural romantic ideals, is one partner who meets all of our needs.
Yeah.
And it's not possible. So we're setting ourselves up.
Whoa, easy now.
Yeah.
We're setting ourselves up for what?
Failure, misery, torture.
Oh.
Yeah, to say the least.
Well, give presence to some of your personal journey. Be as vulnerable and transparent as you feel like you need to be in the public setting. But give some presence to, how you've come upon polyamory, because I know I talk to some people and they don't even know the word polyamory. They
don't even know the word polyamory. And it's interesting, once I actually had sort of my poly awakening experience, I look back and realized, I was actually non-monogamous a bunch of years before. I just didn't have language for it.
Yeah.
Growing up in New York City in the 90s, maybe there were pockets, but not where I was growing up in Brooklyn. There was no words for it, right?
Wow, and that's a progressive space too. It's not like a rural town in mid-America.
I wouldn't necessarily call all of it progressive.
Okay.
Yeah. But so it was several years into my monogamous marriage. And it was actually my clients that initiated it. I had this one summer where all of my couples clients, the therapeutic clients I work with, they were exploring non-monogamy in some way. And I had friends who had done non-monogamy, and now I realized I had actually practiced it before too. But as a good therapist, I was like, I need to start reading about this. And so I started to read Sex at Dawn.
Yes, Chris Ryan.
Yes. And it was in that there was just the aha moment that I was like, oh, this is me. This is like, I feel this capacity and desire to love more than one person at the same time and to explore my own awakening and growth through that kind of process. So thankfully, my husband at the time was really receptive to it because I was like, I think this is you too. And then we realized, we've been sexually exclusive, but we've never been emotionally exclusive to each other. Like he's always had a female best friend and he can stay over her house. And like we've had non-traditional aspects in our relationship in that way, or I'm close to both men and women in a specific way that many monogamous couples would be concerned or fearful about, you know? And so we spent a good month taking long walks and trying to play out every possible scenario, which of course we didn't, but what about this? What if this? And then we opened up. And, some of the story is not fully mine to share, but it was very difficult for him for certain reasons. And it was easy for me just from the personal experience of, as a female, I met a partner pretty quickly, and it was easy and felt very natural to just be in a loving relationship with two different people at the same time. Relationally, it was not easy at all to go from one paradigm to the other paradigm. And there was a lot of turbulence, there was a lot of, and a lot of trauma, I think, that even arose along the way unintentionally.
Yeah. I can say that happened. And the conversations, hours. Sometimes on a daily basis.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is becoming a part-time job.
It is. And I will tell my clients that, especially couples that I'm working with that have opened up, I'll say you need to have time put aside where you're literally not talking about poly. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. Like really, like we're not talking about anything poly related tonight.
We end up processing.
It's over-processing can happen. Yeah.
Processing everything over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've met people and know people who just have a really smooth transition. I want to give name to that. And yet I see, of course, the people who are coming to therapy are people who are struggling with the transition. So my sample size is biased, but yeah.
So what is the common theme on the ones that are having a hard time transitioning?
Well, there's a few different things that I see, and the presentation I think I met you all at sort of went through those points, right? Where one piece is there's just resistance to the transition in the first place. So, there's this way where it's like we want to change the paradigm and structure of our relationship, but I kind of want our relationship to stay the same. And I get it, but it's just not possible. Right? So that's one challenge.
Wait, what do you mean it's not?
Right.
I want to have this experience, but I don't want it to change with my beloved.
Or I want to have this experience, but I don't want you to have that experience.
Exactly, right. And the analogy I use...
that's the way I feel too. You feel the same way?
Right. The analogy I use is like, polyamory is not like, oh, we have this home and it would just be so nice to have an extra bedroom and we just build on an extra bedroom to the original home, right? Whereas polyamory is not like an add-on to this original relationship. It needs to be a transformation of this relationship. Otherwise, that resistance to the transformation and the growth, it usually just causes a lot stumbles along the way. So that's a big one I see. What I see is an overwhelm that happens because you open up And then it winds up exposing all these things from the monogamous relationship that were kind of invisible and a little problematic, right? And usually that has to do with forms of codependency that were unintentional. And so the couple's opening up and you're dealing with this partner over here and their different styles and ways of being, and how do I manage time? I've never used a Google Calendar, like all of these life skills and relationship skills. And then there's all of this past relationship stuff to process. So it can be really overwhelming. Yeah.
Our situation is a space in which I grew up with religious programming that gave me a certain mindset. And if you have sex before you're married, wow, that is really bad. So you have to do the right thing. You have to get married.
Right.
So when I was 17 years old, I was in college. I met this cute girl in chemistry class. And
how fitting.
Exactly. And we became study partners. And I went over to her house and we went to a movie. The first movie we ever watched was Top Gun, and the part where they go, every breath you take. And I did the old stretchy arm thing around and gave her a kiss, and her response was like, David. And I was like, oh, did I do something wrong? And she's like, no, I liked it. And so there was a playful banter. And soon after that, we found ourselves in a wonderful, loving relationship. We're experiencing many new things as young people do. And the next thing you know, we don't have clothes on one day. And
Just happens.
I mean, it was probably 5 seconds of glory for me. I was amazing. And then it was complete. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It was like, that was fast. And she's like, that's okay. She's very generous. And then I had this overwhelming sense of like, oh, you fucked up big time. You just had sex. I was like, yeah, but it felt so good. And at the same time, I was so riddled with guilt and shame. Like, oh my God. So I worked at a pizza restaurant at the time, and I went in there and I had a big smile on my face. And he goes, hey, Dave, what happened? Hey, you've been hanging around that girl. He goes, oh my God, did you do it? Did you do it? I'm like, yeah, I did. He gave me a high five. So I'm like, okay, I'm conflicted because here's my buddy giving me a high
social
five.
Props.
Yeah, and yet internally this religious guilt and shame of, I'm a bad person. But it felt so amazing, and I wanted to have that experience again. And so to do the right thing, I'm like, well, we got to get married then. And so I loved this beautiful girl, and we ended up getting married. I was 19, she was 21. Somebody had to buy beer,
or the U-Haul to go across country.
She had to sign for the U-Haul, And so I joined the Army because you have to have a way to support a family, and who knows what's going to happen next. And I dropped out of college, joined the Army. She was able to finish college. I eventually went back and we got degrees. And that was the beginning of our relationship. It wasn't based on, I love you, let's spend our lives together. Let's experience life, and then two whole people come together.
Right.
We were given a narrative of, well, you screwed up, son, so you got to make it right.
Or two kids that didn't completely have their brains developed
yet.
yet.
We're still babies.
Until I was 25 or 40 or whatever. So in that religious paradigm, to me, I think it's so important for people to not get stuck in those ways. And I know there's a lot of people, that they have a religious story and they get stuck in that. And there's a space where I want to educate my 20-something-year-old kids. Look, this is a journey. It's not a destination. You might find a partner. You might not. It's okay to experience your human body, your sexuality. And so fast forward to a space and time where I'm beginning to deconstruct from these religious paradigms at the ripe old age of 45. And in 2016, I meet a beautiful butterfly. And this beautiful butterfly is someone who inspires me, and I think, what would that be like? What would that be like? I've never been with another woman. I've never seen another naked body other than Gail. That was it. And I went, well, what would that be like? And there were personal things going on with our family and kids and business, and there was a lot of turmoil. And so maybe there's a space of what would it be like, and a space of, well, I don't want to miss out. and then a space of, well, maybe this would provide an escape from all the pressure and the stress. If you would give some presence to some of those experiences that people go into a non-monogamous relationship and maybe they're not based on the right reasons.
Oh, different when people go in for not the right reasons?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, there's this stereotype that people go in because they're non-committal, or they go in because they're afraid of intimacy and things like that. That's not actually what I see, though. Yeah, I don't see a lot of people go into it for the wrong reasons.
So you see a lot of conscious non-monogamy then?
Yeah, I see people going into it because I see maybe two different things, or at least. There's people who it's not even going into it. It's like the same thing as being gay or bi or trans or lesbian, where they don't feel like this is a choice I'm making to enact this lifestyle. It's like, this is who I am. This is how I'm wired. So for some people, it really feels like an orientation. It is how and who they are.
I like how you've given presence to that. This is my identity versus a lifestyle.
Right. And then there are some people that it's like, oh, I philosophically agree with this, or I'm curious and I want to step into this for different reasons. And that's more of it is a lifestyle choice that that person is making. And it's not a static thing. You can go from lifestyle choice, and I've seen people who say they like turn more into orientation as they've done it through the years and sort of couldn't go back. Yeah. So I don't see a lot of people doing it for, off reasons. But does our shadow and our trauma come up when we do it? Absolutely. Right. So a lot of the stuff around unworthiness, not being enough, shame, the things that you mentioned are going to come out in the process. Yeah.
So I'm curious, why are some of the reasons that people decide to make the choice to move into an open type relationship?
Yeah, and there's been some studies on this, which is great. In my practice, though, what I see is it's often love. And sometimes people fall into it. Like, people who are initially swingers first, so they're sexually non-monogamous, but still emotionally exclusive with their partner. And then they wind up meeting a couple or a person in their swinging activities, and they fall in love. And then they go, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then they, shift into polyamory. But a lot of people that I see, and what even some of the studies show, is it's not so much for more sex, even though I think there's nothing wrong with wanting more and diverse sex. But they're doing it for support, for emotional intimacy, for more love, for more connection. Yeah. A lot of people really want tribe. I think that's something that's desperately lacking in our culture.
Tribe, community.
Is tribe, community, and that level of intimacy, though, that comes from tribe and community versus we all live in our individual homes, and maybe I see you, but we have to always schedule and plan it. And, so a lot of people are doing it for that reason, too.
Well, part of our journey is, I guess this is a coming out episode, is, I have to now have a conversation with Gail. So I was told by people, you need to speak your truth. If you have this feeling like you're missing out or you'd like to have this experience, there's no shame in that. Well, what would it be like to say to my partner, who I had been married with 28 years at the time, hey, I would be interested in what that would look like to have another experience. So I had to go to her and say, I have to tell you something hard. And I didn't even have the tools and how to articulate that. I didn't have a mentor.
Yeah, it didn't go so well.
It didn't go well. It ended up with her crying and me feeling awful and trying to soothe her over. Maybe give your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, my perspective was like he's sitting down and we're having this conversation. And this is what I hear coming out of the conversation is, I love you. I love to be your business partner, but sexually, I just, want somebody else. And so, you're feeling like, and we had some major trauma happen in our family. Some major trauma happened at the time. So why I was closed down? Yeah. When your baby birds are struggling, it's pretty hard on a mama.
Mode.
We're dealing with a family member with addiction. We're dealing with business and failure of a venture.
Yeah, we had just gotten
bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy.
And, yeah.
So it's like all this
It's
stuff.
just some minor stressors.
Just a few little
Yeah.
minor ones.
Yeah.
And so for him to come to me like that, it's just like another
It
piece
was
of
probably
rejection.
devastating. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, I definitely freaked out and had a hard time with what he was saying.
Yeah.
And I also faced up to, I did sexually close down. I will 100% admit that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the launching board of us finding ways for us to restore that.
Yes.
And we actually did that through orgasmic meditation.
Yeah.
Nice. And it did restore and open things up
Yeah.
again for the two of you?
It did.
So
Yeah.
that was the 2017 year, and we go into the space of orgasmic meditation where it's a meditation
So you didn't
process.
open up yet.
Correct.
You brought it up and then
I
said,
brought
wait,
it up, I
let's
went,
figure out
okay.
us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so then this came across the path, and so we spent some time working through that, and it allowed Gail just to feel a lot more comfortable with her sexuality. Gave me, but it's still, I had the experience of like, okay, but I'm still not this desire to experience something that I've never experienced before wouldn't go away. And again, I don't know if that's because I didn't feel like I wasn't enough, or I was fear of missing out. I don't really know exactly how to articulate what that was. So then fast forward to the 2018 year, and we're now in a space where we're like, well, let's do the sacred sexuality. So we did the Shulakwe Kwadoshka training, the workshops 1 and 2. And now we're in a space where you get some education, you get people telling you information. I learned about the triangle of the persecutor, the rescuer.
The drama triangle.
Yeah, drama
Yeah.
triangle. Yeah. And so how I might feel like I'm a victim, and I might feel like she's trying to rescue me, and the relationship becomes the persecutor, or vice versa, or
Mm-hmm.
persecutor. But that was really important to me.
Mhm.
And then there were exercises that we did, and the exercises were based on intimacy. And instead of Gail and I deciding, hey, we're going to go into this space and we're going to be just together, we said, well, what would it be like to be with other partners? So we go into
So that was like our first, like,
that was a foray into like,
step out.
you know,
Yes.
but we're still like, you know, hey, how you doing? Good. Okay, me too. Okay, we're good. And you're with him and I'm with her and we're okay.
Yeah. It was a container. And so it was like a very safe container
Yes.
to experience what that would be like, and not feel shameful around it.
Mhm.
Like breaking through all of that. But it wasn't just about the sex. It was, I mean, getting down to the nitty gritty of those shadows that you
Yeah.
have.
Yes.
Think about the child that's coming out in you instead of the adult that's coming out in you, and how
Mhm.
those old patterns of shame and guilt, you know, I strongly recommend just such a beautiful practice, such a
Yeah.
beautiful teaching. And through that, I was able to have an experience with women that accepted and loved me for who I am, and we could have a physical experience. Gail, how was your experience?
Yeah, for me, it was the final breakdown of not being shameful of my body,
Mm.
of like literally having guys accept me for my lovely little tiger stripes I have from having 3 children, my little warriors, you know, scars.
Yeah.
Yes.
And literally being able to reframe my body for myself and accept myself.
Mm.
And I, you know, it's one thing for your husband who's been with you all your life to tell you you're beautiful,
I love your body. Right.
Yeah.
It's completely different when other men, and not just one, but several other men through the ceremonies are doing that and sharing that.
Mhm.
And it's just life-changing.
Yeah, I even want to honor the reframe, because at first they were the stretch marks and they were awful and my body wasn't. Now they're your warrior scars.
I know.
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I like that. I think we need to reframe over here too. The way that you're talking about, like, I had this desire for something different. It must have come from not feeling enough.
There's still maybe this I don't feel well, or I feel like I'm broken going on or something.
Yeah. Like, is it okay to just desire more or
Mhm.
different? not because of the deficiency between either of you or within either of you.
Oh, that's
right?
good.
That like thinking even of human
That's
evolution.
beautiful.
But like of human evolution, we got out of Africa because there was a desire for more.
Yeah.
And there was, like
that is really good.
Jessica Fern is in the house.
Oh my God.
Boom. This is a free show we provide, right?
You know what? Because here's the thing is, okay, there are like the issues that come up, right? But I'm always feeling like I have to come up with a deficiency to justify it.
Yeah. So instead of, deficiency reasons or deficiency mindset or deficiency needs, like what about abundance and thriving and growth?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good.
And it can be, and maybe another way to think of it is that instead of that either or paradigm, it's either her or someone else, or it's either this way or that way, like the both and. I could both love her and be satisfied and fulfilled and want another experience.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's definitely part of the journey.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's, one of the things that we come up against is the not feeling chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, but I do choose you. Well, yeah, but you want to go be with him. Well, okay.
I told her, I said, I feel like I'm an also now. I like you also, and I want to go be with him. And I'm like,
Yes.
This is a very ego-stretching process.
Yes. Well, and sometimes it's because when there's a new relationship with someone else, it starts to get a lot of time and focus and attention. There's all that new relationship energy.
Yeah.
And we don't realize, I am spending less time and attention with you. So that could be part of it, kind of feel like left out and alone.
Yeah.
But if that's not happening, then trusting that she can have feelings for someone else and still have just as many, sometimes even more feelings for you. Yeah.
That is such a hard thing for me. I'm a man.
Yeah.
And is it harder for men? Because you spoke to yours, like it felt more easy for you because you could love more than one easier.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what I would tell him too. I said, I'm a mom.
I know how to love
my children.
Right. We're very poly when it comes to our children. Right? Yeah.
So is that kind of an inherent thing in the female?
I wouldn't call, I'm very cautious to say anything's inherent with men, female, and to take on those gender roles or dichotomies, but I do see in my practice, I see when there's a male-female couple, a hetero couple, the man usually does struggle with the woman being sexual with other partners, less so than her being emotionally connected to those partners. And then usually the female is a bit more struggling with him being emotionally connected to another partner than sexually. It's a pattern I see.
Interesting.
I wouldn't say it's all the time, and I say that and I can think of examples where it's the opposite, right? But I do see it.
Yeah, I fit into
enough.
that pattern.
Right.
I'm like, okay, so you're with him, so you guys love each other, fine, go out to lunch, but just don't have sex together.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I don't care if you have sex, just don't emotionally connect with her.
Right, and I think what happens for men is really love and sex get fused.
It's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing, and because as men, there aren't as many outlets for love and affection. It gets all kind of chunked into sex.
Yeah.
And so when she goes and has sex with someone else, it's like all the love she has for you is taken away.
It's gone.
And it's given to him.
Just went out the door and he gets my love.
Exactly. And so it creates love in this finite paradigm. There's only so much to give and go around.
Simple, teeny box of love.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't have more.
Right.
That's all I have.
Instead of it being infinite.
Yeah.
And replenishing and a well and a source.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's a very conscious way to approach it.
Yeah.
Many people are not at that space. They're like, this is my woman. This is my man. We're together. I own you.
Exactly. It's the possessiveness.
Yeah.
And that really comes with coupledom or monogamy, is that we possess and own our partners. We possess and own their sexuality. And even if you're choosing monogamy, which can be really great, and say, but you don't own each other. You don't own each other's sexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even that paradigm can be a struggle for some people.
Yeah, and I've even been thinking of like, what is intimacy and how do we define intimacy? And culturally, a lot of the ways we think of like intimate moments, intimate exchanges, it is so much about like, I'm only sharing this with you. Or like, you know, you're the only one that ever gets this. And it's very, you know, singular in that way.
Well, that's the true love that you see in all the movies and the books.
Yeah.
Right.
It's you and me against the world.
It's the programming.
Exactly.
Forever. And they lived happily ever after.
Right. And that's this deep programming that we've all been conditioned, and it's in our nervous system. So people go through this shift, and there's all of this neurological rewiring that needs to happen. It can be intense. Yeah. Because even if your conscious mind is like, I know I want to be poly, I want her to be happy with someone else, she's going to come back to me and still love me, I know that there's things going in the body that are like, threat, danger, alert.
Oh my God.
This isn't okay.
Yeah. I can literally feel the pain from the bottom of my breastbone to the top of my breast. I can feel it. I'm like, I can't breathe. I feel like I'm suffocating and getting electrocuted at the same time. And while I'm drinking hot lava. You think it's funny. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's funny. And I never thought it's funny. But watching
you're entertaining when you talk about it. Yes.
It's very might be a naturally entertaining person.
Yes.
So, if I may, as we continue through our 2018 year, we get into the fall. And this will give presence to some of what you were saying. And I say, so Gail, what do you think about experiencing other people? And I know that you went out and had coffee with someone, and I went out.
You got to preface it with something else first.
What was the thing?
The end of Kwadoshka and the bonding ceremony.
At the end of Kwadoshka, go ahead and give presence to it.
So before he tells that story.
Right.
So at the end of the Kwadoshka training, Dave and I had a lot that came out, and a lot that we realized where our relationship kind of started, and in that kind of shame and the guilt, and we just really wanted to lay that down. And so what we ended up doing was a bonding ceremony, and within that was to have that space of freedom. And so that started like in March.
The freedom to explore other people.
What would that be like if we had those experiences without incendiary, you don't love me anymore type of conversations?
Right.
And we're like, okay, shame and guilt, that's how we based our relationship. Let's deconstruct that. If the occasion comes up, I acknowledge that that'll happen. I would like to have a conversation consciously, but you know what? Let's agree to give each other the gift of freedom.
Yeah, but we also had the conversation, if it happens, then we talk about it.
Yeah.
So.
And I was like, before or after? She goes, well, does it matter? I go, no, it doesn't matter. Okay, so if you have it before me, and don't tell me, and don't you tell me later. Blah, blah, blah. So I haven't to work through that. So we go through the summer, and I don't know, and we get to September, and I'm like, well, what do you think? And I know you went out and had lunch with that particular individual. Is that somebody you'd like to have sex with, have a relationship? And she looked at me and she said, Dave, we already did.
And ouch. Granted, I know, it was an ouch.
And I went, slow motion.
This is months later after.
Months
I'm
later.
still in the free fall motion.
It was some weeks or so. Yeah. Okay. But it was, I was afraid.
Yeah.
And here's her response. She goes, have I been any different to you? Have I treated you any different? Have I been more sexually open?
That's a common response.
Is it? Tell me more, Jessica Fern.
It is. Well, people want to prove, see, even though I did this with someone else, I'm still here with you.
Yeah.
So
and that's what it was, because I think he was so afraid that I was going to be different and it wasn't. Yeah. If anything, I actually had a higher drive.
Yeah, and that happens a lot too.
So I'm like, so that's a perk to you, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. See, you're using that to justify it.
Right.
See?
Right.
Meanwhile, nuclear bomb in the center of my body,
and it's hard. It just, I was afraid.
Yeah.
I downright, it happened, and even though we had given each other the freedom to do that, I was still afraid of what could happen.
Yes.
And at the same time, well, I'm not different. And all of this
and
stuff.
you enjoyed your experience.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of positive there.
Yeah.
And overall, I mean, he was very good about it and stuff. And we went out on another date, and he was kind and gracious enough to help facilitate some of that. So,
Yes.
you know,
And I
God
think
blessed it.
there's something interesting in this to me too, of like both your process of having sex with the second person in your life, right?
Well, no, because when I was in high school, it was him.
Right. But it had been decades since you had been with anybody
Absolutely.
else.
Yeah, those were
Yeah.
pre-18-year-old relationships, because I met you when you were
Yeah.
18, and that was it.
Yeah. So it was like still 30 years.
Your process, and then there's the relational process. I can give a personal example. But it was the second person I was with after going poly, but this second person was actually going to be a relationship. And so it was a big deal to my husband at the time when we would have slept together. And
Yes,
right?
tell me more.
And it was something that, we had
Got your
been
calendar?
processing, right? And, of course he wanted to know. And yet for me, it was a big deal to sleep with someone that I knew I was in love with. And for me to actually feel like, what does this mean? And like for me to be sexual and in love with two people at the same time. And so I held on to that for a few days before I said anything. Now, I wasn't lying or deceiving, but it was like, instead of saying something right away, I was like, I need to walk through the world by myself and just feel like, oh, I did this. What does it change for me? Do I feel different towards him? How, like, what does it mean? Because I knew the moment, and it was true, that it was brought up in the relationship. Now that's all we're processing for days, weeks.
I get that.
And so it was like, there was a way of just knowing, like, I don't want to lose out on my own personal experience of this, because immediately once I bring it up, it's all about my partner and their pains and struggles around it.
And I did that. I kind of went through that process where, is this what I want? Is this, that type of thing. So I get that. I didn't consciously do it, but I did it.
Yeah. Right. And so then what happened after this?
Part of that process is
right.
We really want to keep digging into this.
No, I think it's beautiful, because number one, it's of contribution, it's of service, because there's a lot of people that are going through these situations, and we're a couple that have been married for 30 years, and then we decided, well, what would it be like to open our relationship up? That, I don't know how common that is, but I don't know anybody else that have done that. So I have female friends, and there was someone I was able to call and say, hey, I am interested in having an experience, taking you out to dinner, having a relationship, have something. Would you be open to that? And she said yes. And so there was a relationship with her that was a light relationship. It wasn't heavy duty, we're going to be in love forever. It was just, let's have a light, playful experience. There were a few of those light, playful experiences. And in this process, I was like, okay, that would be fun to be able to be into that, but I'm still like, I don't want to hurt Gail. And every time I go to do something else, I feel like I'm going to hurt Gail, because I have this overwhelming desire to provide and protect. And again, I don't know exactly what that drive is, but I'm like, it's my job. I have to meet all her needs, whatever that old programming is. So there have been times when I was with another person and I was unable to engage. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Never had this problem. And he's like, sorry.
Interesting.
And I'm like, what? And then at another time when I was with Gail, it was like, hello, ready for duty, sir. No problem. So I'm like, okay, it's not a physical problem. Aye, Captain.
Right.
But then there's this like, so then I turn into this space where I'm like, okay, I'm having this internal struggle. It's between the ears. While she has no problem whatsoever. I gonna go out, have a great day. I'm leaving. I'm like, wow. And so then I start to realize that to me, love and sex are the same, and love and sacrifice are the same. I'm like, you're not sacrificing for me.
Yes.
And that was one of the biggest revelations that I had coming through this process.
Yes. And how have you worked with that?
It's, when he would tell me something, I took him at his word. He didn't like that I took him at his word.
I'm like, well, if you're going to go out to coffee, why wouldn't you just spend the afternoon with him. She's like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, then you should be saying no because I love you too much, right? And she's like, oh, okay, thanks for the permission. I'm like, oh, crap, I just gave her permission.
Yes.
And she's like, well, I took you at your word. You said it. I go, yeah, but you're supposed to do the opposite, aren't you? Because love is sacrifice. That old religious programming. Jesus loved you. Sacrifice his life. That old religious programming.
Right.
Deep.
It is very deep. Right.
Yeah.
And you're doing the things we agreed to, but how dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you do it? We agreed.
We agreed, but why are you still enjoying this?
Yeah. That,
Right.
I mean, I feel like we've been on major boot camp.
Oh my God.
Yes. Opening
is
up is
consciousness
boot camp.
Yes, consciousness on
Total boot camp.
steroids.
Yes. In relationship, in communication, in sex, in STI information, like so many different kinds of boot camps that you're on.
We had to go get a panel drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we stand?
Right. Because in monogamy, you're just like, did you get tested? Yeah. You get tested? Yeah. Okay, great. And you're like, what tests?
Right?
We don't even know.
Mm-mm.
Right.
So what are some of the struggles that you kind of went through when you opened up?
Yes. So it was definitely the shift of being in a primary relationship to how do I have multiple loves? And, you know, the experience of in that primary relationship not always being the first anymore, not always being the only anymore.
Mm.
And so that was a big adjustment.
Was it more of an
between us.
adjustment for you or for him?
I think I was the one first who found more of a very significant emotional partner.
Mm.
And he had important relationships, but sort of maintained me as primary in a lot of those.
Mm.
So what came up for me, though, is what I call justice jealousy, which is it's not that I'm jealous that you're doing that thing. It's just that thing that you're doing with her is the thing I've been asking you to do for the last decade, and I have just accepted that that's not who you are, and now suddenly you know how to do that? Right?
Wow.
So I call it justice jealousy. So I went through a lot of that where it was just like, whoa, you're able to show up in these ways that I've kind of been wanting, and just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see that in a lot of long-term relationships that open up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes. Attachment stuff was also really prevalent and big in different ways. So that experience you're describing of like lava in my body, it's like, oh, that is the primal panic that comes up when our primary attachment figure is turning away from us. Mm-hmm. And even if our conscious mind knows she's going to come home, the body doesn't know that. And it's like, it means death, right? Because the first survival mechanism we have as infants is to actually bond with a caretaker who's going to meet our needs. So it's emotional connection that is survival. Mm-hmm. And so when we feel, and this happens a lot in non-monogamy, is you feel emotionally disconnected from your partner because maybe they're just with someone else, and it feels like you're going to die.
Yes,
it feels like death.
Yeah.
And then also, usually if we're in one relationship, we sort of have one attachment style being expressed through that relationship. But with poly, you can have multiple attachments with different partners. And that I experienced, and it was overwhelming, very dysregulating to feel like, oh, I'm showing up with this attachment style here and this one here, like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So attachment style. So tell me.
Yes. So the premise is that, as human infants, we have these needs that we need to have met by our caretakers. And it's not just food and shelter and warmth, it's also emotional attunement and emotional connection and touch. These are biological needs, right? And so depending on how well our parents are able to meet those needs, which may have nothing to do with them. Sometimes it has to do with environmental factors. You're in famine, you're in war, there's too many people in the house, right? Or they have their own trauma. But depending on how well a parent can meet and attune to the child, we usually feel very securely attached if they can do it. And secure attachment is I feel close and connected with my parents. I know I'm safe, or my caregivers. And then I feel safe and confident to go out into the world and explore. right? But if our parents are unavailable or inaccessible or unpredictable or even scary, we take on these secondary insecure styles.
Okay.
Right? Where there can be an overactive expression, which is this preoccupied, anxious attachment, where there's a lot of moving towards your partner and a lot of anxiety. And the moving towards, though, is this way of being wave-like, as Stan Tatkin calls it, is to like pay attention to me, listen to me, meet my needs. Right? But there's a lot of insecurity in there. You know, usually that person doesn't feel like they're enough and they feel very dependent on their partner.
Yeah.
One of the other styles is there's more of a pullback and a deactivation of their attachment needs and a minimization of their attachment needs. So they tend to be more avoidant and they don't approach, right? Arm's length, lone wolf. I might want relationship, but I don't do intimacy very well. And then there's another style that's sort of high on both. They're high on the fear and the sort of avoidant piece, and then they're high on the anxiety. And that's usually when there's been trauma. And there's sort of like two things going on in their nervous system of like, I want to be close, but being close seems really dangerous.
That's a risk.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And it usually comes from previous experience of trauma where your caretaker, who's supposed to be the one who takes care of you and soothes you from fear, is what you're afraid of. So it's a paradox in the nervous system in that case.
Well, my childhood was very nurturing and loving. I would say that yours was too.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have, core wounds that we get as a kid
Yes.
and all that stuff, whatever that karmic journey is. Oh, thanks consciousness. I came here to work out something.
Yeah.
But I didn't have abuse. I didn't have
Right.
A traumatic reason to say, well, I can't trust my partner. I need to have a different experience. I simply was like, well, what would that be like?
Exactly. So it sounds like you came from secure childhoods and then together created a secure bond, right?
Yeah.
And what happens, as I see, is even couples who have a secure bond in monogamy, is you take the structure of monogamy away, and guess what? Poly is inherently insecure. It doesn't have all the given and the knowns that monogamy has.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh, I've been relying on the fact of us being monogamous as part of my safety and security and my identity as a man and my understanding of duty and all of these things.
I'm validated because of who she is. I'm now a man because of her.
Exactly.
So when she's gone, I'm not a man.
Exactly. So this is what happens is people feel safe and secure their whole life, and now suddenly in their 30s, 40s, 50s, they open up and they're having an insecure attachment they've never had to deal with. And it's intense.
100%. And that safety and security and that certainty that I got in religion, when I deconstructed from that, I still had certainty in my relationship. I'm like, well, let's see how hard we can make life.
Exactly.
Let's deconstruct from a standard monogamous relationship. What would that be like?
Right.
Oh my God.
I don't think you did it that consciously.
No. But there's...
how hard we can make our lives. Let's see what...
Right. How much can we push the edge?
Yeah.
But
edge junkies. Somebody told me you're an edge junkie. Yeah.
I like that. But then I think certainty can be evolved in the next rung of experience, right? Because there was certainty that you had from we're married, we're monogamous, and I'm certain, right? But what I heard you say earlier is, but I still choose you, which to me is the elevated certainty of I'm with you today because I choose you, not because I married you, not because I'm obliged and in duty to be here. You know?
It's just I choose you.
I choose you. And I think that's ultimately, a deeper sense of wow.
That's good. Yeah. We've learned the experience of making a decision based on reasons or considerations versus making a choice and saying I choose you because I choose you.
Yeah.
So part of our experience into polyamory was like, well, tell you what, let's do this thing where you go out with him, I'll go out with her, and we'll have, now to my fault, I will use this word on purpose because the butterfly called me out on this, have an experience versus a relationship.
Well,
so my shop,
it was date night. That's how we started
had
it.
date night, yes.
We're going to go have date night.
So our kids are like, where are you guys going? We're going on date night. They didn't know we were going
But you would drive
different
separate
dates.
places.
She literally got in a car and I got in a car and our kids were like, did they just leave in 2 different cars? And we're like, not telling you. We've eventually told them they're all in their 20s. They can handle these conversations. But for me, it was like an experience versus a relationship. And I think that was a part of my mindset that needs to have a little bit more expansion or consciousness to it.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I want certain experiences, and as long as everyone involved is okay, and especially if the other people know that this is more of an experience than potentially leading to a relationship, great. But in More Than Two, they talk about like Frank and Polly, and I think this is a similar thing where it can just be like, I'm going to collect experiences. You know, there's a certain need I don't get with you, so I'm going to just find someone who meets that need, and that's their purpose. And then the people in the experiences aren't really humans with a voice who can have a say in the even experience or the relationship that's happening. Right? So just to be careful of that.
No, that's a very valid point, because to that exact point, the butterfly was hurt because she doesn't want to be an experience. And I was like, oh, well, you're not an experience. Yes, I am. Oh, fuck, am I doing that? Am I creating an experience? And yet Gail has a relationship, and she's like, but you've had a relationship with this person for a long time. Here's a history of reasons why. And I went, oh, I do have a relationship, a depth there.
Yeah.
And yet I'm like, okay, well, how do I put this into, I have a relationship with you and a relationship with you, and Gail has a relationship with him, and it may be him, and okay, now to give some language to the couple that's saying, we want to have these other relationships, experiences / relationships. What are some of the ways you go? I remember the word from your presentation, uncoupling. Is that part of that process?
I think it's a needed process when a couple has been together for a long time, especially monogamously and married, is the importance, and this comes from, I think it's called the Polyamory School. If people look up, there's an article on it. And they really emphasize the need for decoupling. And they say to do it before you even open up. But most people aren't doing this and planning months ahead, right? You're doing it retroactively, and it's a mess, right? Is what's happening a lot of the time. You know, you're picking things up as you go, right? But the importance of decoupling from that couple identity, that it's me and you against the world, like you said, and I'm half a person and you're half a person, and we complete each other.
Yes.
Right? Which is sort of the like romantic ideal, which is actually codependency.
Yes. That Jerry Maguire scene where he says, you complete me, and everybody's like, oh, there's my other guy.
That's what I aspire for, right? That whole thing. And the couple identity too, like, so you had date night on the same night, even like even when we go for other people, you know, we're still doing it together, right? Instead of, we're 2 autonomous people who might live together, who are choosing to stay in relationship together, and we're also having relationships with other people, and I can dictate my own time and my own schedule and my own body and my own sexual choices. Instead of that permission-based, is it okay if I go out on Friday with him? Oh, is it okay if I do this with him or her? You know?
So that's the energy that we were in. And I said, well, if we just open it up, then we're just roommates. Well, what's the point of being in a relationship and being married? We're just roommates.
And this starts to happen, the deconstruction of not just maybe monogamy, but like, what is marriage? What is living together? You know, the deconstruction of all of these social constructs that we live under. Yes.
So does that feel, that feels like, because the way you say that is, we're just roommates.
I feel
very negative.
I feel negative about that. I'm still, I'm still in this process.
Oh, yeah. We are, 100%.
I'm not a guru here to tell you how to do it.
So do you feel like the 2 of you are still romantic partners?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have great sex. We have great conversations. I'm not lacking in any of those areas. And yet there's still this underlying like, well, that would be fun to have another person. There's, I mean, that curiosity. It's, you know, and yet I still desire the certainty of the monogamy, where I tell Gail, I go, it's a lot simpler. I don't have to think about anything else. We can just do that. So it's still a challenge for me.
Yes. you're still in the birth canal.
Mm.
And those contractions hurt.
Well, to complicate it more, Gail has a partner that is in the poly community, very conscious, and her partner says the most important thing is to make sure that I hold you in a container and hold your relationship together. So my job is to support both you and your husband. And when I was when I'm in relationship with the butterfly, she says, you don't understand, my desire is to be in a monogamous relationship. So I agreed to do this, but now I'm in love with you and you're in love with me. And I'm like, true, we truly love each other, but I don't want to be poly. I want to be in a monogamous relationship. So I'm like, oh, well, how do I make that work where I don't want to hurt Gail? Then do I leave Gail? Do I burn down the village and go to the others? That's the biggest challenge.
Yes. And that is a very tricky one because it sounds like you went and met someone who was also poly.
Yes.
And so you're in a poly experience.
He was my mentor.
With them.
I asked him for some advice. Yeah.
And he wants to be a support of your relationship and a metaphor to you and can, right. But it's very difficult when we have someone who steps into a poly situation, but they actually want to be monogamous. And there's usually a lot of heartache.
Mm-hmm.
And
so then there's PTSD and all the trauma that goes with the amazing experiences that have been created in those relationships, and then they're taken away. And I totally acknowledge that person and that experience.
Yes. Yeah, there can be a lot of loss in poly, and it can happen simultaneously too. Because maybe you have 3 or 4 relationships and you might lose 2 of those relationships in a year. But that doesn't happen in monogamy in the same way.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the way I looked at it is you love big, but the losses can be just as big.
The losses can be just as big. And often people around us as friends or family, they don't acknowledge those losses in the same way as they do if you would 2 split.
True.
Yeah.
True.
You know?
Yeah.
And it can be just as painful, as even more sometimes.
It's very hard for me to have to comfort my beloved because I asked her to break up with her boyfriend.
Yes. Yes.
Now I feel bad because I asked her to do that. And I'm like, I'm too afraid, I can't do this. Hurts too bad. So expand and contract and expand and contract.
Yes. So are you 2 practicing veto power then?
No.
Okay.
Tell us more.
So veto, or even, well, it looks like there is a hierarchy here where it's like we're primary and other relationships are going to be secondary. Is that
at this point, that is what has happened.
Yes. And so then veto is when one of you can make a decision for the other relationship. Please break up with so-and-so. Is it really a please, ? Or I kind of have to break up with so-and-so, right? Or no, you shouldn't date that person. You know, so that's where someone has authority over a person they're actually not in relationship with, right? And so that can be really the struggle of people who are in more of a secondary position, as they feel like they don't have the same rights in their own relationship with you. That maybe the spouse has.
Yeah, and that's been a struggle.
Yeah.
But it's like he was okay with it. My other partner was okay with it. But I think when it really came down to it, he really wasn't okay. Like he wanted to have more say in the relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I mean, there's some people who are like, great, I don't have the time or the resources. I want to be in a secondary position because I can't show up in the way that would be more of a primary or, you know, no hierarchy situation. But for a lot of people, it can be really confusing and painful and not actually what they want. Yeah.
That is an interesting space because I have had someone that said, hey, I'm interested in only a secondary relationship. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And then the person that I started this journey with is like, I'm only interested in a primary. I do not want to be a secondary, which is hard for me because I truly love and care about this amazing human being.
And it sounds like it wasn't just primary because you can actually have multiple primaries.
Oh. I'm sure you can have anything, and that's the
Yeah.
newest thing is you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
you
you know, and that's an interesting thought. You can have more than one primary. I guess people are associating primary with 100%.
Right. Whereas what I will call them is my inner circle partners. Right.
Okay.
And I can only have a certain amount of inner circle partners. There's just there aren't enough resources for
I love
that.
that term, polysaturated.
Yeah, it's true. You get polysaturated or life saturated, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not even, like in my case now, there is a limit on the amount of partners that I have, not just because of those relationships, but it's like I'm writing a book, I have a 4.5-year-old son, my business is doing certain things, there's a family crisis that went on, there's all of these elements of life.
Yeah.
Like I just don't have the time. And resources to, because for me, my style is I like to do closeness and intimacy. I want to dive in with somebody. I don't do casual as well. Whereas if you can do, some people can do both or they like casual, great. Have as many partners as you have time for.
See, it's interesting because for me, I think that one or not as many, to me, I just feel safer.
Yeah. With less.
Yeah.
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 Just more simplicity around how many partners you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most important things that I've learned on this journey is something you alluded to earlier. You complete me. It's two halves make a whole.
Yes.
I had a space in meditation in the fall of 2018 where I remember where I was sitting and I remember the day. I said, this whole thing about the two shall become one, this biblical paradigm of, you complete me, whatever that is, I don't think that's right. I think you have to be whole in yourself. And I saw these two orbs go like this, and they separated, and then they went and they sat in the same canoe. I don't really know the significance of the water and the river and the canoe and going through life, flowing, whatever that
together.
is, the journey.
Great
but I saw
metaphor.
these two canoes, or I saw this one canoe with two orbs of light in it. And I felt like Spirit was telling me, you are complete and whole. You have your own spiritual journey, and so does she.
Yes.
And when she is with another, she's doing something that is self-discovering who she is and what she's doing and why she's here, and things that you can't show her because you are a different mirror. And there's things you can show her that he can't show her.
Right.
And I literally saw two entities, and it was there. And it did say, now your living expenses are going to be easier. You can have a shared economy, children, whatever the paradigm that helps with raising community can be done faster. And I saw the image of individuals in their little canoes by themselves, and they had to go back and forth, and how you can focus on that, she can focus on that, and it's
smoother and faster.
Yeah, I just saw this journey through life that was a lot smoother, faster with a partner. And so having that relationship with a partner, something that you're doing on purpose. This is my partner. And then maybe there was a multiple partner because now I have a different experience. But that, to me, that was a really significant thing, saying you are whole.
Yes.
So part of my journey is to feel whole when my beloved is not with me.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. And it's the same for me. You know, I struggle with some of that too. Of the fear of being left alone, or having to be on my own. I just haven't had to.
Right, because so much of even the personal identity is the togetherness, and it's like my identity is with my partner and what they do or how they make me feel.
I mean, I don't see very many words that come out of my mouth that's not we.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, everywhere down to the emails, the pictures that, it's like not my profile picture, it's a profile picture of the two of us.
Of the two of us, all the passwords to your accounts or your anniversary or your names combined, right? Like so much of it is that together identity.
Yeah.
And it's very sweet, but it can really also feed this underlying narrative that you're deficient alone and you're not whole. And I think truly loving each other is your differentiated wholes, and I love who you are separate from me. I don't love you because of how you make me feel whole. And that's a shift as well. I don't just love you because what you do for me or how you make me feel, but because of who you actually are.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and one of the things that I see, like a way I'm even defining codependency, is when we make our partner the source.
Yeah.
So you are my
Yes.
source of affection. You're the source of my sexuality. You're
Yeah.
the source of love.
Yeah.
Instead of I'm the source of my happiness, my awakening,
Yeah.
my love, and you might be the object of where I focus those things that I choose to focus, but you're not source.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most recent ayahuasca ceremony that we had, ayahuasca sat me down and said, "Okay." I'm like, "Okay, I have this problem. I have somebody I really like, but she wants to be monogamous. I have to break up if I do that, But now Gail's with somebody, and he doesn't mind polyamory, but I hate when she's with him, and then I can't be with her, and then I don't know. Okay, ayahuasca, you got to tell me." And and she goes, "Calm down." She goes, "We're going to do this." It was a 2-night ceremony. We're going to do a Friday night and Saturday. She said, "Tonight's Friday. All you're going to do is experience bliss." I was like, "What do you mean?"
What?
She said, "There's all those low vibrations of fear and anger and guilt and all that stuff. And then raise your vibration. You get up to love, joy, peace, and then bliss." And this is the Dr. David Hawkins scale. Google Dr. David Hawkins. You'll see it. And that enlightenment or that bliss state is just pure, just like, And she said, it's like that orgasmic state.
Yeah.
And most people in this 3-dimensional world, they crave sex so much because that's the only glimpse they get of what it would feel like to be in ultimate bliss.
And surrender.
Yeah.
Surrender.
Yeah.
So ayahuasca is working on, you got to enjoy yourself. And I go, "Well, why?" She says, "Because you're miserable and you're not experiencing bliss." And she says, "But Gail's experiencing bliss." I go, "Well, yeah, that's because I support her and she's got this other guy." And she goes, "Uh-huh. Oh, okay, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. Okay." And then the other guy gets to be with her and other people. And she goes, "Uh-huh. All right, I guess there's nothing wrong with that." So they're in this state of bliss. What are you? "Well, I'm miserable." No. And all the reasons why. She goes, "Let it go. We'll solve that problem another time. Experience bliss." And so I spent that space just experiencing that breath and that bliss and that feeling of just feeling good and likening it into that sexual height where you're just like, "Oh, I just feel really good," and just spending the time in that bliss. And then that was the lesson. And it was just a few hours of just being in and then I would be like, okay, but what about the problem? And I'd start to go down. I'm like, no. So part of that for me is this experience of I'm okay, I'm whole, and bliss is the most important thing that we need to experience. And she said to me, the highest form of worship is to enjoy yourself.
Yes.
Oh, she said, "You're part of the divine that came here to be human, have a discovery. You have to enjoy yourself." I went, "Well, that was the first message I ever got. It was enjoy the ride." That's my catchphrase. I say that all the time. She goes, "Now you're starting to get it, pal. You've got to learn to enjoy yourself." So that's part of my journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much of the Joe Dispenza work, right? Is that we become addicted to the miserable self. And then we're like, why can't I manifest and create in the world?
So
And then
because of his work, he's taught me that, Dave, you're addicted to misery.
Yeah, exactly. And that we have to raise our vibration and stay in that state in order to create these other potentialities, I think is what he calls it. Right?
Yeah.
And so, what is that bliss you? How does that experience poly instead of the miserable you?
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Okay. Give some presence to what a couple, this theoretical couple that has been married for 30 years, and where the man, we'll call him Dave, is freaked out all the time because he's trying to figure out who he is and what he's doing here. He gets a certainty from his partner. We'll just call her Gail for the sake of fun. And she's like, "I'm okay playing in pastures and having relationships.
This is fun.
I can love many people." And she's in her bliss. And then I'm trying really hard not to stay in that misery state. How do I move forward? And the thing I've learned from you is once you've taken the baby home, you've had it for a few weeks, you can't take it back to the hospital.
Right. You don't just go back to being monogamy necessarily because that's what's easy.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have recently asked, can we be in a space of sexual exclusivity for a space and time so I can learn how to be in my masculine, not to be in my scared little boy, but to be in the strength of who I am and to learn and grow.
Yeah.
what advice do you have for us?
Yes. So I would say, like, and if we were working together, what I would focus on with you is creating more of that autonomy, creating more of that secure anchoredness in yourself. You know, you really experiencing, like, practicing daily your feeling of bliss, your feeling of source, your feeling of being resourced. Right?
Good.
And even figuring out, there's probably energetics here too, which I don't necessarily do in all of my work, but sometimes of like what decordings need to happen so that a different chord of a higher elevation higher vibration can get connected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you did some of that with your bonding ceremony, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's also what I see is there's just still core outdated beliefs.
It's deep programming. It's hard to get rid of.
There's the little boy that you've mentioned a few times, and it's like, okay, I want to talk to that little boy and see what he's needing that he didn't get, so that he's not the one screaming every time mommy goes away.
Yeah, mommy goes away and the little boy starts screaming.
Right, exactly. And how for you to tend to that boy, it's not about shoving him away, but you becoming the one who's soothing him instead of you expecting her to be the one that's soothing that little boy. And then the man or the adult comes forward and says, I do need support, but it's a very different experience. So sort of like how to support you in growing up more. Yeah,
so
those are the things that initially come to mind.
Yeah.
That's good.
Talk about your
Really
work,
good.
your writing, the things that you're doing. I know that this is 2019.
Yes.
Maybe by 3 years down the road, you'll have volumes of material you've written.
Yeah, well, the book that I'm working on now is about how to do secure attachment in non-monogamy. Because currently the overwhelming majority of what's out there on attachment just kind of either assumes or overtly prescribes monogamy, right? Or what I hear from a lot of my clients often is like, there's this great book on attachment, but I can't do half of the things they say because it's not for a non-monogamous audience.
Yeah.
And then what I've seen is there's a lot of things that happen in this transition that disrupt attachment that we need to understand and start talking about and raise awareness about. So that's sort of the creative project now. And then after that, I mean, I'll continue talking at conferences, which I love.
Yes.
And I'm going to continue to talk about trauma and poly, how we both bring our traumas into poly, and then how poly can be traumatizing, and what do we do with that, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll be doing some retreats in 2020.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
And are those like coaching things or exercises, experiences?
Yeah, that's going to really be, so, the book that I'm writing is talking about like, what is all of this? And the retreats are going to be, how do we actually do this? How do we create new practices and habits and rewire our nervous system and our emotional habits so that we are more secure in ourselves and then can show up more secure in our relationships?
That's good.
Yes. Yeah, and even, your show really focuses on spirituality, and a lot of people get confused because there's the non-attachment spiritually, right? So they think, I shouldn't have psychological attachment.
So good.
Right. And so these are two separate things, right? Where there's spiritual non-attachment, and then there's psychological, psychobiological attachment.
Yep.
Okay.
And what I see is you can't actually reach the higher states of spiritual non-attachment until you have a secure attachment in your body, with yourself, with others, with the earth. If you don't feel safe and secure on this earth, it's very difficult, or it just becomes a bypass. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that is really, really important that people feel that safety, security, and
because then I can actually let go.
Yeah.
Then I can actually move through the ego.
Yeah. Part of that ego construct is to be your personal protector, to keep you safe, and nothing's going to protect you, and screw all those other people, and so I do acknowledge and recognize those ego constructs that come up, and yet it still hurts. I feel it in my body.
Yes.
So what do you do now? You can't take the baby back. Do you just focus on that interior? Is that?
Yeah. So what I think are the focus, there's two that I come up with folks, are you need self-soothing practices, and then you need alignment practices. So the self-soothing piece are these old beliefs, these old parts, these hurt parts that need to be tended to.
Mm-hmm.
And usually initially there needs to be a regular practice on how I'm able to self-soothe, so I'm not flailing and turning to everyone else to do that work for me or avoiding it completely, right? And then that alignment work is, well, who is this preferred me? You know, and who is the me that wants to show up, maybe in different ways, but that's more aligned with my values, with my principles. Yeah.
That's really good.
How do people get in touch with you?
Yes, they can find me at jessicafern.com. They can email me there. Some talks are already on that website. So yeah, that's the best way.
And you do counseling and coaching, so you can do that.
Yes.
For anybody.
I work with people
anywhere.
Nationally and even internationally, and you know, we call it coaching. It is coaching, but working with them, helping them transition, helping them work with this attachment stuff or even trauma stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. Yes.
Well, we appreciate you being part of our journey and helping us navigate through this this fun human experience.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So we say
Thank
namaste.
you. Namaste.
Thanks for joining us here on Exploring the Human Journey. You can find us as a video on YouTube or listen to us as a podcast. You can also join in the conversation by following us on Facebook and Instagram. For more information, go to the website at exploringthehumanjourney.com.